You're joining the conversation with Shortlisted, a podcast from the Greater Midwest Chapter, or GMC, of the Association of Proposal Management Professionals, where we chat about proposals, the business of winning work, and nailing the shortlists in our lives. I'm Paul Lockwood, a senior pre-sales support analyst at the Vitality Group in Chicago.
And I am Heather Finch. I lead a team of proposal and presentation specialists, and I'm located in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Today we're talking with Mike Parkinson from 24 Hour Company. Hey, Mike, could you tell us a little about yourself and your background?
I'm a geek. I love the science and the art of all that we do. It's absolutely amazing at its core. It's behavioral psychology and persuasion science heuristics. And I love reading about it, learning about it, applying it, sharing with people. I love when other people become as enthusiastic as I do. I own two companies. One is called 24 Hour Company. It is a primarily proposal graphic shop, but we do all of other creative services. And another company with my wife called $1 Billion Graphics. It's a micro company, and that we create graphic products and do training. So those are the things that I do. Just a huge nerd about all this stuff.
Well, it's all geek to me, so it's
nice. Well played, sir. Well played.
So you're a Microsoft MVP and a CPP APMP Fellow. What does all that mean?
Basically, it's the way to oversimplify it is it's saying that someone said, based on these metrics, you're pretty good. And I consider it a huge honor, and I immediately feel that I have an obligation to help others. So once I found out that I was a Microsoft MVP, because I didn't quite know what it was, and once I heard about it, then I was like, ooh, that sounds something I'd like to do. And then someone has to nominate you. The same is true for the APMP certification. That's through training and testing, etc. Forgive me, everybody. I have a post-COVID cough, and it comes and goes. But ultimately, now what I try to do is, as much as possible, do workshops, write articles, and contribute to conferences and corporate learning events and things like that to share the stuff that I've learned from people way freaking smarter than I am, which I'm on with right now, Paul and Heather. So I'm sharing the information that I've learned from you with other people so that they too can get better at what they do and share that same level of enthusiasm that I think we all have for the things that we like. Now, there are things that we do that we don't like, and I get that. However, when we're doing that thing about our jobs that we love, there's no other feeling like that in the world.
Yeah, Mike, I will admit there are times when I'm a bit of a fangirl because your enthusiasm is so infectious and it really energizes me. And I'm thinking back to my first role as a proposal manager, and I attended one of your workshops, I think at BPC one year. I mean, we're going back into the potentially 2 digits of years here, so it's a while back, but I remember learning some of the tips and tricks that you had in PowerPoint around graphic design, and then sitting, getting back to my desk and like playing with them and just being so excited to be able to put things together. So, I mean, is that what energizes you? Is it being able to like create your own graphics? Like, what is it that energizes you to keep energizing others?
I think two things. Number one is being able to be creative, and creativity isn't just about pretty pictures. It can be writing, it can be coming up with a new process, it can be solving an engineering problem. Definitely creativity feeds my soul. It recharges my batteries. The other thing is collaborating and doing workshops, doing sessions. I really, really love doing things like standing in front of a group of people and us having a conversation about ways to make our jobs easier, ways to make our lives easier. And that's essentially the way I see any workshop or sessions that I do. It's a conversation. Even if we're doing a webinar, and I think I've done them for thousands of people where not everybody can contribute, of course. However, when I'm presenting, when I'm facilitating, I am presenting it as if we're having a dialogue. So I'm assuming that you're going to have a question about something that I said, and I'm hopefully going to address that. If I don't, there's a QA box you can type it into, and I do my darndest to answer every one of the questions that come in. So ultimately, there's this contact, excuse me, there's this contact high that I get from being around people like you, and you see the faces when they're, what a great feeling when someone goes like, you see the aha moment, the moment where they're like, where's this been all my life? Or that thing that you just showed me made the whole conference worthwhile. Or they tell me, hey, in the last session I saw, Paul shared something which blew my mind, and everybody in the audience goes like, what? I know, and Paul, and Heather, I'm sure there are things that you do that you're like, well, you just slice the bread and you put it in the bag, and people were like, whoa, 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 you slice the bread first. Like you think, well, everybody does this. And when you say it, surprisingly, I remember there's this great story of, and I'm probably going to get it wrong, but there was a pilot who had a great record in World War II, I think it was, for shooting down the bad people, and people couldn't figure out why he was doing so well. So he would explain to people, and they're like, I do that, and I do that. And then they said, can you take us to your cockpit and walk us through it? And he said, sure. So he gets in the cockpit, and he's doing this. He's putting his thumb up in the air and looking around, and they're like, what are you doing? He goes, oh, this is how I block the sun so I can see if there's anybody coming from. And they're like, what? So basically, a lot of times the enemy would know where the sun was relative to where you were, and they would come from the sun and you couldn't see them. So he would put that up. And that's the type of stuff that when I go to these events, I'm learning from other people, and I hopefully am sharing with others too.
Well, we're always hoping to learn something from you.
Oh, gosh. Wow, you're such a funny guy.
And when it comes to slicing bread and putting it in the bag, we definitely don't loaf around here.
Oh, wow. Hey, Paul, you're like bread, kneaded.
Yes, and I'm not even on the East Coast.
Oh, well played. You are the master. I bow down before you.
So, 24-hour company. I've always wanted to know why that name. Obviously, you're not working 24 hours a day. You'd be dead on your feet. But are you trying to work around the clock, or what is the? Why did you come up with that for the name?
Well, my business partner Dennis started the company 30-ish years ago, and he and his partner then Alex worked pretty much 24/7 as needed. And they needed to come up with a name that spoke to their discriminator. And that discriminator was that they were willing to do whatever it took to get the job done. And back in the day, 24-hour days was very, very normal to do proposal development because it wasn't as mature as it is now. Don't get me wrong, it still happens now. It just happens less. RFPs are usually smaller, yada, yada. or the solutions, this page count smaller, the orals, the length of the orals. So he said, let's call ourselves 24-hour company to speak to our discriminator. And then, of course, he didn't imagine that the company would grow and he'd have to hire people for a 24-hour company. So imagine, Heather, hey, would you like to work for a company called 24-hour company? No, thank you. So, but unfortunately, we lobbied hard for Dennis to change it. When I was brought on as a partner about 25 years ago, we lobbied hard to change it because we were still working 24 hours a day, and it was tough. I was also a lot younger then, and I could do it. Nowadays, I have done it. I still do it occasionally. When the poop hits the fan, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll move mountains for my clients, and I don't want to. However, I will. So we just kept it because of brand recognition now. It's like, it's like, who is it? Boeing's logo. I mean, it's kind of a hot mess, but we know it. As soon as we look at it, why change it? We recognize them as Boeing. So yeah, the name comes with a price, and that's a price we're willing to pay now. We just say, when people say, yeah, you're the 24-hour company, we just say, it speaks to our commitment. We will do it when it's necessary.
So how do you differentiate the graphics that 24-hour company can do and billion-dollar graphics? I mean, if somebody comes in through one of those channels and you say, oh, wait, no, you really need a billion-dollar graphic. You need to come over here.
So the easiest, easiest way to do that, 24-hour company is graphics services, billion-dollar graphics is graphics products. So billion-dollar graphics will not do your graphics for you. It'll give you DIY tools and training. So if you want to do it yourself, it's billion-dollar graphics. If you want someone to make your problem go away, it's 24-hour company. You can tell I've been asked that question before.
And you have such a succinct and easy way of differentiating. That is great.
And you didn't get too graphic with it, so that's really good.
That's true. That's true. No, I didn't. There are children present now.
Yeah.
So, Mike, I mean, I could listen to you talk all day. And it's been interesting to hear you talk about like some of the trends that you've seen and the way that you, even in your businesses, you recognize like, hey, it's one thing to be able to provide graphics, but there's this like untapped market that people need to learn how to make their own graphics and that kind of thing. So you are clearly very in tune with the industry and the progression of it. So I'm gonna ask you the billion graphic dollar question. What is the future for our industry?
Ooh, for our industry, I'm certainly seeing, I've watched it over the years, smaller, shorter proposal responses, commercial and government, federal, state, local, it doesn't matter. I'm seeing it get smaller and smaller, shorter and shorter. The paradigm, the way in which we present the information, package it, is going to change because the generational shift. I think the last statistic I heard was the average age of a government evaluator, and I can't tell you about commercial because I haven't seen a statistic on it, was 28 years old. So that's the new change. So you've got a demographic that has come up with a different set of life experiences, different biases, for example, just their aesthetic bias. You know, what are they going to lean more toward versus what is a previous generation going to lean toward? Those are shifting. So that is some of the biggest things that I've seen. The commercial companies and the federal government has frequently said, we need you to provide the information we're requesting as succinctly and clearly as possible. And for years and years, solution providers failed to do so. They typically did they would say, do you do this? Do you have a solution that does X, Y, and Z? And they would say, that is, having a solution that does X, Y, and Z gives great value. Gosh, do you do it or not? Yes, we do. Thank you. And they didn't do it. So what was happening is you'd see Coca-Cola, you'd see Disney, you'd see DHS say, all right, you used to have 200 pages to answer this, or you used to have 200 slides to answer this. Now it's 100. You're still doing it. Now it's 50. You're still doing it. Now it's 10. What they want is they're like, please, when we ask you a question, when we look for your proficiency, please answer us directly and succinctly and clearly. And every evaluator I've spoke with, commercial or government, says, hallelujah. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not like RFPs are perfect. It's just we are very guilty of being like, I don't know what you mean by that. So I'm just going to throw a bunch of stuff up here and hopefully.
One of the things that you also do, I understand, is like coaching interview teams. And I'm just wondering if you have any pet peeves or bad habits that you once and for all, you'd love to see go away when it comes to coaching and helping to correct those interview teams.
When you say interview teams, you're talking about when they're doing orals for contracts, correct?
Yeah.
Well, there's a few. So there's 3 rules I have as an orals coach. It's know what you want to say before you say it. It sounds silly. However, people think, I know this stuff. I do it every day. And then they get up there and they're like, well, I could talk about this or I can talk about that. Know what of that spectrum of stuff you can talk about you're going to say. So know what you want to say before you say it. Number 2 is to be yourself. Don't be fake. People have an amazing bull stuff detector. We hate fake. People buy people. So we want to make sure that we are just who we are. Some people are academic presenters. Some people are goofy. Some people are punny. Some people have amazing hair that just got done, Heather. And all of these qualifications, all of these things work for them because they're what's the word? Authentic. They're authentic. And that's the second thing. The third thing is practice, and this is the secret, out loud. Because in my head, I did an amazing job at presenting that section. But when I get up in front of people, I tend to fumble. How do I recover from that? Because everybody's going to make a mistake. Making mistakes is actually a good thing when you're presenting because it makes people like you more. If you're very, very polished and very, very good, then people becomes a turnoff. They're too perfect. It's like, it's almost intimidating. So the biggest pet peeve is when people develop their content is that my number one secret is for orals coaching, or when I'm putting together the content, is to go macro to micro. Start big picture first, then drill down, because most people go micro to macro because it's what they do. It's what I do for a living. I can solve this problem. Well, the first thing you do is you get a widget. Well, what's that widget do? How does it connect back to the RFP requirement? Yada, yada. So what we do is we go big picture to little picture so that we tell a great story. And I start off with a message, and it's like an elevator pitch. It's a 1-sentence summary of our entire presentation, of our entire orals. And I always start with motivators. Motivators are going to be benefits or outcomes or something like that. What happens after we win? People really struggle with motivators. I'm doing orals coaching for a company right now, and I hung up about 4 minutes before our call. And when we started, immediately when I said motivators, they were talking about their abilities. That's not a motivator. We're the incumbent. That's not a motivator. We have a lot of experience. That's not a motivator. Because of, I like to play the so that game. We've been an incumbent for 5 years. So that means what? And just keep doing the so that game until we get to that motivator, that true motivator from the audience's perspective. A motivator should be nice and selfish from their perspective.
So, Mike, like you've dug in on it's like you've touched everything, like with the idea, like the design and the graphic portion, technology, process improvement, all the way to like the psychology behind how to make your proposals really effective. So you clearly have a mind that can take on a lot of different things. So this is all the lead up to the question. What do you like to do in your free time?
The short answer is, if you ask my wife, she'll say, yeah. Sadly, it's work. When I have downtime, I'm working on Build-A-Graphic, which is this new software I launched with Jennifer, and it's therapeutic. But I also dig on, traveling with my wife, hiking. I really like hiking, like lifting weights, so that, it's just trying to make myself feel like if I take my shirt off, I'm not too embarrassed, that type of thing. Not that I'm planning on taking my shirt off anytime soon, but still.
Keep the shirt on, Mike.
Exactly.
Lifting weights can really be helpful because, we have to deal with dumbbells sometimes in this profession. So.
Oh my gosh, Paul, you are a master at this. Man.
All right, we're going to move on to the next section of our program here. The best thing that happened to you this month. And we'll let Heather start. What's the best thing that happened to you this month?
Oh, you know what? Like, it's the weather the last couple of days. So we've just, coming out of winter and rain and rain and rain and snow and rain. And then the last couple of days, it's been 80 degrees and sunny and beautiful. And that has been just absolutely restorative to my mind and soul. So that's the best thing that's happened to me this month.
That's
cool.
Awesome.
Mike, what about you?
Boy, I kind of want to hear yours, Paul. My number one thing, we've been working on it for a while. We just officially launched our software, Build-A-Graphic, and we are over the moon about the responses that we've been getting, and it works better than we thought it was going to. And this company called New Power helped us make it happen. Amazing company. It exceeded my expectations. So it's a real blessing. It's awesome.
Cool. Well, the best thing happened with me. I write a monthly newspaper column for our local weekly newspaper, the Woodstock Independent in Woodstock, Illinois. Sometimes my column is serious, sometimes it's funny. Therefore, I named it a number of years ago, Musing, because it can be amusing or it can be amusing. Anyhow, I just found out after submitting 3 of last year's 12 columns to an Illinois Press Association competition that I'm winning an award. I'm not sure yet if it's first, second, third, or honorable mention, but in the original column category for mid-size, non-daily newspapers in Illinois. And I also found out another columnist at the same paper is also winning one of the 4 awards in the category. There's an official awards luncheon coming up in June down in Bloomington. Several of us from the newspaper, which were actually getting at least 29 awards in various categories. We're going to be taking a day off to carpool down there for this luncheon, cheer each other on. We'll find out, for first, second, third in each of these different categories. 2 years ago, I was an honorable mention. Last year, the newspaper forgot to submit any of my columns, but the fact that my writing is considered good enough for a statewide award, it makes me feel like I'm doing something right, so to speak.
Oh, I'm sure you are. Congratulations.
That is very good news indeed.
Yes.
It's the kind of IPA that I, as a non-drinker, can get into.
All right, well, it's now time to address a question from one of our members. So Dear GMC is your opportunity, your being our listeners, to submit a question about the proposal and winning the business industry. And we've got one on small business ownership today. So Dear GMC, my husband and I have recently been talking about getting into business together. We have compatible working styles, strong work ethics, and pretty strong value proposition. Individually, we have already taken on freelance work and each have a few clients. Together, I think we'd be able to offer clients a unique set of services and really expand our business, even to the point of being able to quit our full-time jobs one day. However, I worry about mixing our business and personal lives. I don't want our marriage to suffer, and I kind of like having that separation between work and family. It forces me to close down work and focus on my time with my family in the evenings. I worry the lines will blur and our whole lives will become work. Do you have advice for those looking to go into business with family or friends, or setting healthy boundaries and ground rules? Sincerely, Matt Tremoni. So, Mike, I know you've got some experience with this yourself. So do you have any advice for Matt?
There's 2 things that popped into my head as you read it. Number one is that due to my familiarity with my wife, the way in which I interact and communicate with her, I'm a jerk face. So essentially, I would never say to, let's say I'm working with you, Heather, I would never say, Heather, I would never do that. How uncool that would be. So understanding that, I think it comes with the territory. I don't know anybody. Dennis walked with his wife. My business partner, Dennis, worked with his wife, Sandy. And I remember them communicating. And almost every day I'd be like, ooh, because the way that familiarity causes someone to, oh, they'll forgive me. Whereas if I would speak to Heather that way, Heather would say, I need to call HR on you. There's no HR to call. The other thing that I learned years ago from someone way smarter than me named Michael Gerber was define the roles and responsibilities, because most small companies take turns taking turns, and that can lead to miscommunication. So basically, I'm like, well, didn't you have it? I thought you had it. No, I thought you were going to get it. You always do it. No, I don't always. Remember? Your job, your role is this. My role is that. Jennifer and I, I'm sorry, have clear roles and responsibilities, and I often step on her toes and get her upset. So sorry.
Yeah, I think it was funny. And I promise no spoilers, but I was watching the most recent episode of Secession last night and just kind of marveling at how these people cannot talk about anything outside of work and the business and the drama around it. I'm like, and that seems very accurate from what I've seen growing up around family that had small businesses. My grandparents owned a brickyard and a trucking company company, and that had that natural segregation of duties because my grandpa did the trucking company and my grandma did the brickyard, and sometimes they came together because the trucks had to deliver the bricks, but otherwise, they really had their kind of clear separation of duties. But and they were really able to just turn it off at night. Like the office was next door, like literally right next door to the house. And as soon as they walked in the house, you just stop talking about work. I don't know if they had those discussions, if they made that decision, but it was really, that ability to kind of like keep that separate was pretty impressive. Paul, do you have any thoughts for Matt?
I thought about it a little bit. If my main concern, I guess, is that when there's two people, whether they're related or not, if they disagree,
Mm-hmm.
how do you determine whose side, is gets the heavier weight? That's why many city councils, for example, they may have an even number of city council people, but they have a mayor who, if there is a tie vote,
Mm-hmm.
casts the deciding vote. If it's just the two of you, I'm sorry, Matt, there's just two of you. So you kind of need to go into this thinking, okay, how are we going to be able to make those decisions when we do disagree on something? And also the concern about, and I think you addressed it, Heather, as far as a certain time each night, that whether it's when you walk in the door at the home or whatever, that you say, okay, we've done talking about work for today. We've got to be able to relax. We've got to be able to enjoy the relationship we have beyond our partnership. So, I think, when you're talking about the brickyard and the trucking company, clearly they built up something with, they constructed something there that was only semi-successful.
Oh.
But Matt, I think, just go into it with eyes wide open and talk seriously about how are we going to be able to make difficult decisions when we are in disagreement.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Paul, because I mean the letter talks about having, good skill sets, similar work ethic, but does not address that communication, and that's the core of any kind of relationship, right? That ability to communicate and know how to move forward. So perhaps even Matt and his husband might want to go to some couples counseling in advance of this and talk through some of that with a neutral third party, and see how that all resonates. So, well, great advice all around. I think we've got some stuff for Matt to mull over.
Yes.
And it's time for that disclaimer, Heather, isn't it?
Is it time for the disclaimer? Oh, that disclaimer already. All right. A quick disclaimer and reminder. The advice offered in this podcast is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. Use of this podcast is not intended to replace or substitute any financial, medical, legal, or other professional advice, including graphic advice for that matter. This podcast, its hosts, and APMP GMC are not responsible for the outcome or results following any advice in any given situation. You and only you are completely responsible for your actions.
Okay, so if we're now on your final list of podcast favorites, we'd love to hear from you. Submit your Dear GMC question or any other question or suggestion to info@gmcapmp.org. To all those winning business out there, on behalf of me, Heather, and all of us in the Greater Midwest chapter, we'll GMC you next time on Shortlisted.